A woman took a rasp and relentlessly scraped her scalp until blood streamed down, but she didn't feel any pain. Instead, her face lit up with pleasure. Afterwards, she went to the bathroom, wrapped the wound with gauze, and sat on the edge of the tub, letting out a satisfied sigh. For the past 11 months, the top of her head had itched unbearably. No matter how she scratched, the itch never stopped. But today, for the first time, she found a way to relieve it, and it brought her immense satisfaction. Valerie believed her chronic itch was caused by a medical condition, so she contacted a doctor, hoping to be prescribed some strong medication. But after reviewing her family's medical history, the doctor suggested she see a psychiatrist. He said her itch might be psychological or even hereditary. With that in mind, Valerie decided to ask her family about their medical past. Her mother had already passed away, leaving only her father, who had become a Buddhist monk. On the way to the monastery, her scalp still itched so badly that she had to drive with one hand while scratching with the other. When she arrived, she didn't get out of the car immediately. She took a bite of the snack in the passenger seat, mentally bracing herself before stepping out. Then, gathering her courage, she walked into the monastery. It was clear there was an unspoken rift between her and her father. Her father had taken some things from their old home, things Valerie now wanted back. She believed they could help her uncover the root of her itching, but her father denied taking anything. He gently reminded her that, given her current status and wealth, she didn't need those things anymore. But Valerie wasn't listening. Her eyes were drawn to a painting on the wall.
What is it?
Sanshi.
Okay. Why is it the only thing you have hung up in here? It's creepy.
It's a reminder. Sanshi translates to hungry ghost or hungry parasite.
While her father explained the significance of something called Sanshi, Valerie suddenly felt the world spin around her. Sensing her distress, her father rushed forward to support her. But as she looked at the hand he extended, she saw a swarm of ants crawling out from his sleeve and recoiled in terror. Her father left to get her a glass of water. Seizing the moment, Valerie began searching the room. In the wardrobe, she found some flour and a key labeled with a storage number. Without saying goodbye, she hurried off with the key and located the storage unit. Inside were various items from their old home, along with a locked cabinet. There, she found her birth certificate and a photo album. Back home, she flipped through the album. In the early photos of her parents' marriage, her mother always had a radiant smile, but as Valerie was born and grew up, the smile faded from her mother's face, replaced by exhaustion. Her mother was always crossing her arms tightly in a self-protective pose. In the final photo taken before her mother's death, fear and helplessness filled her eyes. Her arms were swollen and red from constant scratching, and behind her on the wall, there seemed to be a dark claw stretching outward. At night, Valerie often scratched her scalp unconsciously in her sleep. To prevent this, she wore gloves, tightly wrapped with tape, and finally fell asleep on the couch. She thought she could finally rest easy. But deep into the night, an ant crawled out from inside the glove, up her arm into her nose and down her throat. A sudden itch in her windpipe jolted her awake. She couldn't breathe, writhing on the floor. Then, with one violent cough, she spewed out thousands of ants from her mouth. Valerie woke up from the nightmare, quickly scanning her surroundings and confirming it had just been a dream. But when she touched her forehead, she realized something was wrong. The gloves were gone. Her fingers still had traces of blood, proof she had scratched her scalp again in her sleep. Clueless about what was happening to her, Valerie began searching online for information about Sanchi. At the same time, her father sprinkled salt over the painting of Sanchi and muttered, as if he knew that Valerie, no matter what she did, could never escape Sanchi's grip. Valerie gradually realized that both she and her mother might be under some kind of curse. To confirm her suspicion, she found her aunt and showed her the last photo of her mother.
After the war, something terrible took hold of her. Cursed her.
But her aunt said nothing more. She stood up and left. Before leaving, she warned Valerie to stay far away from her venomous father. Though Valerie now knew her mother had been cursed, the itch remained unrelenting. Last time, gloves hadn't worked, so this time she built a stronger device in the basement, a timed contraption. Once activated, chains would pull her arms tight and wouldn't release until the countdown ended. Thinking this would be foolproof, she fell into a deep sleep. But 2.5 hours later, she suddenly woke up, paralyzed in a nightmare. She could only watch helplessly as the rope binding her left hand untied itself. Then, a black hand made of ants appeared, gripping her left hand and dragging it toward the back of her head, rubbing the itchy spot again and again. And at the foot of the bed, Sanchi slowly crawled up to her pillow. When Valerie woke up, her left hand was uncontrollably scratching the itchy spot on the back of her head. The broken skin oozed blood, staining her fingers once again. Her husband pounded on the door, calling her name from outside. Valerie jumped out of bed and hurried to open the door, only to find complete darkness. Suddenly, Sanchi lunged at her from the shadows. It was a dream within a dream. This time, Valerie truly woke up. The timer device from the night before had worked. Her hands were still bound, and she hadn't scratched her head at all. But the relief didn't last long. Her father came knocking with terrible news.
You infected, V. It's in your blood.
Infected. With what?
Sanshi.
Valerie quickly noticed her father was showing signs of withdrawal again and told him to leave. But after drinking the tea he brought, her body went weak. Her father took advantage of the moment, snatched $100 from her purse, and left. Though he claimed to be clean, he still came to Valerie now and then, asking for money to feed his addiction. In a daze, Valerie remembered the locked cabinet in the warehouse. If it was hidden, even inside the warehouse, perhaps it held the secret behind the curse she and her mother shared. She drove back to the warehouse and broke open the lock with a hammer. Inside the large cabinet was only a folder. The folder contained clippings of old news articles. One headline read, "Wife drowns, husband cleared of suspicion." The wife referred to Valerie's mother. If her mother drowned and there was no suspect, then it could only have been suicide. But why would her mother take her own life? Among the papers was also a disturbing drawing, what appeared to be a large Sanchi with a smaller Sanchi standing beside it. Valerie didn't understand what it meant. Suddenly, she fell into another hallucination. The view outside the window turned into a vast ocean. She saw her mother thrashing in the water, trying to swim upward. But then her father appeared, grabbing her and pulling her into the depths. Valerie thought she had uncovered the truth. Her father had drowned her mother. She grabbed a knife and stormed into the monastery to confront him.
Why'd you kill Mom?
I had to save you. I told myself you didn't have it. But she knew the truth. You were born with it. And it's all my fault.
Valerie's father had once been a fearless soldier on the battlefield. The souls of the dead buried beneath the ground had summoned Sanshi. Sanshi latched onto its hosts, feeding off their desires. The more the host harmed themselves, the stronger Sanshi became. Her father had passed Sanshi to her mother, and Valerie had been infected the moment she was born. Her mother had once tried to drown herself and Valerie in the river, hoping to end Sanshi's torment once and for all. But her father believed Valerie was uninfected and tried to save her, accidentally drowning her mother in the process. Now he realized he was wrong. Valerie had been infected all along. He had tried countless times to resist Sanshi's destruction, but Sanchi was patient, endlessly tempting its host with desire day after day. So even though he had publicly declared he'd quit drugs, anyone who looked closely at his shadow could see Sanchi growing stronger inside him. Soon after, he collapsed onto his bed and died. The sight of his death made Valerie's scalp itch intensely again. She couldn't stop herself. Her hand reached back to scratch. By now, she had clawed a hole into her skull. She couldn't control herself and shoved her fingers deep inside the wound. Valerie never returned home that night. Her husband searched everywhere and finally found her at the monastery. He rushed her to the hospital just in time to save her life. The doctor explained that an infection in the back of her skull had softened the bone, allowing Valerie to pierce it with her fingers. Damage to her left brain had caused temporary motor dysfunction on her right side, but with rest, she would recover. But only Valerie could see Sanshi, its reflection encircling her in the glass. After some time recovering, Valerie was nearly healed, but the habit of scratching her head in her sleep remained. Now, she had made up her mind. It was time to end things with Sanshi. Worried her husband wouldn't understand and might get in the way, Valerie tied him to the bed. Then she locked herself in her studio and began researching Asian theology. According to the texts, she arranged 5 mirrors in the room and lit dim lights to summon Sanshi. When the ritual began, she called out, demanding to know what Sanshi wanted. Maybe they could negotiate. Sanchi suddenly appeared and seized her. Once again, Valerie was toyed with by Sanchi. She realized there was no peaceful resolution. After long contemplation, she made a difficult decision to sacrifice part of herself. Since Sanchi controlled her hands to endlessly scratch, she would give them up if it meant keeping her life. She went into the basement. After mentally preparing herself, she used a chainsaw to sever her right hand. But Sanchi seemed unfazed. It appeared again and helped her cut off her left hand too. As she slumped down beside the chainsaw, she suddenly pulled her remaining hand away, just in time. With one swift motion, she swung the blade and severed Sanchi's hand instead. Sanchi howled in pain and fell to the floor, but a moment later, the hand grew back. Then, it dragged Valerie to the edge of a swimming pool. There, it showed her the horrifying final moments of her parents' lives, whispering, "You can't save anyone, not even yourself." But Valerie suddenly turned around, wrapped her arms around Sanchi, and leapt into the pool. The water expanded into a vast, endless ocean. Valerie sank deeper and deeper. Before her, Sanchi kept changing shape. One moment her father, then her mother, then her younger self. Like many East Asian children, Valerie had been born into the duty of inheriting her parents' expectations, forced to grow into what her parents wanted, what society wanted. She had been raised on discipline, not affection. Since childhood, she'd learned to mask the lack of love with a shell of toughness. But deep down, she had always lacked the courage that only genuine care could provide. Sanshi was the embodiment of all that pain, born from within East Asian families, passed down through generations. Valerie looked at her younger self, so small, so neglected. She embraced the child within her, offering the love she never received, trying to fill that inner void. She struggled desperately to swim upward, to escape the endless ocean. It wasn't just about saving who she was now. It was a chance to heal the little girl she once was. At the same time, her husband, having escaped his restraints, arrived just in time and pulled her from the pool. Cradled in her arms was a small black creature. As the creature dissolved into black water, Sanchi vanished beneath the waves.